Yeah, another thing we could do is just like go through Instagram and talk about things people are posting.
Okay.
What's up, guys? I'm just getting set up here.
All right.
What are you guys looking at on Instagram?
Kind of like Austin's looking for political posts. Why don't you look up like Trump 2020 or something?
Okay. From 2020. Oh, 3.5 million posts.
Dang, dude.
Wow.
Some attractive girls.
Damn. Okay. Okay.
Not the
Like
third one.
if you think Trump won the debate. Did you guys watch the debate?
The first
No,
one?
dude.
Yeah, I only watched the first one, to be honest.
There's two, right?
Let's see what Biden says here.
Audio.
Lit. Democrats wore masks before it was cool.
That's hard, dude. That was a good post.
Damn.
I like that. Wait, can we expand on that? Like, how do you feel about that? I know, like, back in the day, like, the values of what Democrats and Republicans have now was, like, reversed.
Yeah.
Like, and then, so somehow, like, there was, like, a transition between the two. But,
yeah, because this would have been in the South, right? Like, the KKK was in the South mostly, and the South was, those are conservative states. So, like, maybe, I think it was just the names that switched, or...
I don't know.
Or no, it wasn't the names. The party switch was
the parties.
It was the actual ideology switched, I think, or something like that.
I wonder if it was like instantaneously or if it happened over time. But just like on the subject of KKK, real quick, did you know that Mount Rushmore was sculpted by a KKK member?
I didn't.
Didn't know that either.
Dude, that leaves a weird taste in my mouth.
What do they teach? I know that they wear the white hoods and stuff, but like what is that group all about?
Basically, just the white race is like the one that should be in charge.
Really?
Max,
Yeah.
you don't know what the
That's
KKK
nothing.
is? Are you serious?
I seriously I don't know, dude. That like doesn't exist anymore. Like, well, I guess it does.
Yeah,
Like
it does.
in some little
Yeah,
parts
no,
of
it
the
definitely
world.
does, dude. There's I have a black friend who had KKK marches outside of his house when he was a kid.
I thought you were
Hey,
gonna
dude.
say you have a black friend who's in the KKK.
No.
Back in like the 70s, there's this dude named Ron Stallworth. He actually infiltrated the KKK and made them think he was a member. Like, so he was like a detective. So he like got on their mailing list, and like every time they would talk on the phone, he would like change his voice, and then he had like a white officer impersonate him to go like to the KKK meetings, and through that they were able to like really like dig out the structure and see like the people in charge. It's really interesting, dude. Ron Stallworth.
Sounds a little like Roald Dahl.
What?
Roald Dahl.
Just the way it sounds.
Yeah.
You have been given the privilege to register to vote, so take it. You have the ability to make a change and choose a candidate that aligns with your political views.
It's really good. I like that one.
Do you really have the choice to pick a candidate who aligns with your views, though?
Oh dang, dude.
Oh, that's a good point. Or do the candidates choose your views?
The
The parties choose your views a little bit.
parties. That's okay.
Or do you like sacrifice your views and just pick someone who like is the closest to what you think you want?
Well, I think that's what most people do, but over time, there's being in groups like this, people start to agree more with the group. That's the group
Monke.
polarization thing that happens.
Yeah.
I just learned about this in social psychology. Like, basically, if you're around a lot of people that are a part of a group that you adhere to, your opinions will start to become more like the group, and over time, that changes your attitudes also.
Birds of a feather
true.
flock together.
Yeah.
Is there what do you think we can do to like? Is that a bad thing, or is that something we need to be aware of? Like questioning our friends, questioning the people that we hang out with.
What do you mean questioning your friends?
Like just like kind of analyzing the beliefs and like the patterns of the people around us, and just kind of like really like taking that in and trying it on and seeing if it really is like for us, if we like align with it, or is it just kind of like them choosing your outfit? Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I think most people feel like a moral obligation to have some kind of political stance because everything is so radicalized. It's very hard to like, for instance, if you're a person who's left-minded, the left is very, very, despite being like tolerant, they're really not tolerant. They're very intolerant. And so like, if someone has very extreme left views, they're going to like, you know, probably get really angry at you for all the things you don't agree with them on. Maybe not exactly the same, but similar on the right. I think if someone has conservative views, they might kind of silently like, you know, not consider you a conservative or something. But yeah, I think it's different because like this is how I see it. I see conservatives, the main thing operating to keep their group cohesive
Uh-huh.
are these traditional ideas, which like from Christianity, like from religion, it's like traditional morality. And so they all kind of appear to appeal to this higher power or government, you know, God's laws and stuff. And so they're kind of implicitly united under that, where the left is not really as united because there's a lot more like kind of subtle conformity and stuff that happens so that people, I think that they're pushing for certain issues, but they actually end up just wanting to feel like a part of the group. And then this is why, I mean, I remember seeing so many like videos of left protests where you ask the people questions about what they're protesting and like none of them know the answer. I think the left is definitely a little more like they push harder on people socially to accept the tenets.
They push harder. Yeah, okay, I feel you. That's because that's where we get more. We receive more like social media input from like liberals than
Yeah, I was gonna say the
conservatives.
same thing. Like social media, I don't really get that from them in real life, but I do on social media.
Yeah, I mean the left is just more interpersonal in general. Like conservatives are more individualistic. They have an internal locus of control. They just kind of tend to have this more like, you know, standing on their own kind of view about things. So they don't really pressure other people on their beliefs as much, but they hold them very strongly. Whereas the left, it's like they pressure people very strongly, but they also are naturally a lot more sociable and like interpersonal. So I think in that way we can't think of the groups as like equal because they have different mechanisms of getting people to be a part of the parties. Like if you noticed in the first presidential debate, Joe Biden like he kept looking at the camera and like saying very like heartfelt kind of things to the Americans, and
Okay.
that's like exactly how you talk to people on the left because they're high in empathy and they have a lot of care.
Okay.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump, he's just refusing to budge on like certain things, and that's basically conservatives in a nutshell. They just have these very hard, firm beliefs. And Joe Biden, you know, in that first debate, he didn't really attack any of those or anything. He kind of just kept looking at the camera and like those were his big moments where he just said something like, I really care about you guys or something like that. Meanwhile,
Hmm.
Trump's just basically showing that he's like not going to give up and stuff. And that's something that conservatives like.
Dude, wow. You're good at this.
Thanks.
You're like a
Yeah.
Well, I'm a
heck yeah, dude.
psychology major, so
Yeah. So, okay, let me ask you this question. Do you think it's possible to have a presidential candidate that's popular with everybody? Or like 90% of the people? Like if they demonstrate those two things, would that be like the popular candidate, you know what I'm saying? Or the ideal leader?
yeah. Well, I think there are actually a lot of leaders that could fill that spot. Like off the top of my head, I know there were a lot of presidents in the past, not a lot, but there were some that were like well liked by both sides of the political spectrum. I felt like this election year, Andrew Yang was a good candidate like that, where he had a lot of conservative and Democrat support because he just really came in the middle. He ran on the Democratic side, but he was really, you know, a
That's
middleman.
what she said.
What?
Came in the middle.
Okay,
What were you saying, Austin?
I don't remember now.
Oh man, dude. Andrew Yang,
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
he
yeah. It's
had
like
both
kind of
sides.
well, you're like, yeah,
yeah. So
like on
there
both
could
sides.
be, I believe there could be a president like with the audacity and steadfastness of Trump, with the emotional like integrity of like Biden or something. Like I think it could definitely be possible.
Okay.
Emotional integrity of Biden. Like when he said that poor kids could be just as smart as white kids.
What?
Well, that just shows the politics of it. Maybe not emotional integrity, but like his empathy. Biden shows more empathy, whether he actually has it or not. He shows more empathy. Like,
Yeah, he's got empathy. I like what he said about his son in the first debate. And I thought it was pretty low blow of Trump to knock that. You guys know what I'm talking about? He commented on I guess Biden, his son is like a veteran or something. I don't really know, but apparently he struggles with drug abuse, and Trump was like knocking his son about that, and he kept pushing the buttons, and then like at a certain point, Biden said something like, yeah, my son struggles with drug use, but like I'm proud of my son. Like my son is like a grown man, and like I'm proud of what he's done and how far he's come. That was just really cool, like it was really low blow. Like I can't believe that Trump is knocking somebody who is suffering from drug addiction. As a person who, like we all kind of grew up in the suburbs. We have a lot of friends who, have gone through that. You guys, I know, Austin, I know you have lost some friends. Omar, I'm sure you probably know some people too who have succumbed to that. It's not cool to knock that, make fun of it. Like, oh, your son is a loser. Like, no, he's not. Like, he struggles with drug use.
So do you think like those low blows are appealing to some people?
Yeah, I think a lot of conservatives, especially the ones farther on the right, they like that about Trump, that he's like
he doesn't care.
Because to them it probably seems like, oh, he's seeing past the bullshit. He's not gonna take Biden's rhetoric or whatever. But yeah, I think, well, there is a part of conservatism which is very like exclusive. It's like, I mean,
it's very, like they don't like victims, like right, like they like the victims. Social programs. They say like, oh, like you should just like work hard. Like most conservatives, I don't think they have like disability, and they like look at people who collect disability and they're like, oh, like that's terrible. But then like the second it happens to them, it's like, then they're like, oh, wait a second, like I want some disability. Like they're pretty just headstrong, like people just saying like, oh, like it, like you just gotta like throw on your bootstraps and get it done. A lot of people like that don't have PTSD, if they're conservatives, they'll just be like, oh, like that's fake. Like, what do you mean PTSD? You don't need extra help. You don't need anything. Like,
like if it's not experienced in the individual or what?
Yeah, like they'll say like, we don't need to have social programs for people with PTSD because they should just get back to work. Or we don't need to have social programs for people with drug and alcohol problems. They should just get back to work. Just stop doing drugs.
What do you want to say, Austin?
Yeah.
What do you think about this? So this person basically says they think that every time they post something critical of Joe Biden, their Wi-Fi service disconnects. Probably just a coincidence.
That's freaking funny, dude. Wait, I don't know. What does it mean? Initially, I thought about it like the clips I've seen of Joe Biden. It feels like he's losing his Wi-Fi service. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Approval among likely black voters jumps to 46%.
Likely. What does that mean?
I don't know.
Likely black voters. Up until 1913, Americans kept all of their earnings. Despite this, America still had schools, roads, colleges, bridges, vast railroads, subways, and a military. Wow. Is that true? 1913, Americans... Yeah, Google that.
Modern income tax structure, born in 1913, but Americans paid taxes before that. Oh, this is about the post we just looked at.
Yeah.
Need some additional context. That's when the 16th Amendment was ratified, which allowed Congress to collect tax on individual incomes. Huh. Oh, it was the birth of the 1040.
Whoa. It wasn't the first time Americans paid tax on their earnings. Yo, what if we just go like Boston Tea Party on Trump and Biden?
What do you mean?
I don't know, like, what if we like do something like that to break away from the government, to break away from the two-party system?
What would it be?
I mean, that could happen, but I think it'd be hard to do it on social media because social media, the algorithms and stuff, they naturally like polarize people. Like, look at this post. This is a perfect example. Being opposed to BLM does not mean that you don't believe Black Lives Matter. Just the fact that you have to say that, right? Like,
Oh, why? Is it like telling us to think a certain way?
well, no, I think this is actually a good post because it's saying being opposed to BLM doesn't mean that you don't believe Black Lives Matter any more than being opposed to communists meant you didn't believe workers matter. Right? That there's this idea that if you don't agree with Black Lives Matter, then you hate black people. Like that's literally the way the internet makes you think about it. These hashtags, though. Liberalism is a mental disorder. Liberalism is a
Whoa.
disease. Democrats hate America. Democrats. Democrats are racist. This is the hashtags that people on the right like, I guess.
Okay, that's good to know, dude.
Was Trump derangement syndrome? That's another one.
Yeah, I like that tweet that lady did. Wait, go back up on the right. Samantha Marika. We should listen to the experts, in quotes. It's the most controlling and fear-based statement. We should do our own research and think for ourselves. So 2 things about this is like, I think it's kind of weird that she's labeling something as controlling and fear-based. Maybe it is for her, but I don't know. I think it's weird, like using controlling and fear in your statements, I guess. And
it's funny because she wants you to listen to her.
Exactly. Yeah, you feel me. But I like the message that she's saying though. It's like we should do our own research and think for ourselves. It's like,
yeah, I just flipped back to my screen here.
Yeah.
I didn't have my screen open. It looks like the fan is like coming out of my face.
You got a 5-star halo. I think we should do our own research and think for ourselves.
Anyway. I mean, I agree with this person 100% because here's the subconscious or kind of not explicit thing that happens when you tell people let's just trust the experts. When you say that, you build a sort of barrier between yourself and government, saying that it's not my place to have a say in truth. I'm going to let the government tell me what's true, right? And so the problem with that is that there are a lot of researchers on every field imaginable that have published books and done research, and the common person can become educated about those things, like knowledge is power. So a lot of people, honestly, on the left and the right, depending when it suits their agenda, they basically just, I believe in argumentation, it's the argument from authority. They just say, oh, well, this person's in this position, so that means we should trust them. It's like, really? I can think of a lot of people in positions of power that we probably shouldn't trust. Like, what about Trump? If you're going to critique Trump because, it's like he's the president of the whole country, but yet you'd critique someone else who's in like, a government position. It's like, well, you have to subject everyone to the same kind of lens, because some people are naturally just better speakers or they appear more trustworthy. There's different facets of like, when someone's trying to convince you of something, there's like the central route, there's the peripheral route, there's all these different types of ways they try to appeal to different people. And so like Biden, great with peripheral cues and great with his ethos, like comes across like he cares a lot more than Trump does, in my opinion. Trump is more central route, where he's like just trying to talk about these ideas and be straight up about it. But he also doesn't really have that ethos and everything that Biden has. And we have to understand that these are just 2 people who, in my opinion, are both part of the same corrupt system, but that they just make their points using different tools to appeal to different kinds of people. So I think people like really have to do their own research to come to conclusions about pretty much anything, because if you just blindly believe what the government says, then, I mean, it's convenient to be ignorant in that way because, like, it's easier to live too. If you can just afford to be like, I just trust my government, all of it, then get to live a nice life. You don't have to worry about shit, but like, you won't really know the truth about things either, because we can look at past examples of where the truth has been covered up, or even our own government admits that they lied to us, like multiple times. Our government has done stuff and like 50 years later told us, oh yeah, we actually did this, or like when we found out that the CIA killed Martin Luther King, like,
yeah, dude,
we're gonna trust that government like blindly? Like, come on.
Like
we found that out. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. And then they experimented on inner city people with like LSD as like a mind controlling substance.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that. The McUltra, right?
MK
Yeah,
Ultra.
MK Ultra.
MK
McUltra.
Ultra. I
McUltra,
don't know.
dude.
I read something about it, so like I didn't know it was pronounced MK Ultra. I thought it was literally Mick Ultra.
I like
But
McUltra better.
hell yeah, dude.
McUltra. Yeah, McUltra.
Yeah,
Something you could order at
man.
McDonald's. I'll have a McUltra.
Laced with LSD.
Yo, Austin, I really appreciate the lens that you view all of this through. Like you're really enlightening me to see their behaviors as far as like these two political roles we have right now.
Yeah. Well, dude, check this out.
Also, I love how Max is just doing his thing. Like,
I'm doing dishes, man.
I dig it.
So this has to do with psychological differences between Democrats and Republicans and independents.
Okay.
This is Big Five. Oh yeah, so Democrats are driven by external locus of control, Republicans by internal locus.
What does that mean? Internal locus of control?
Oh, I can't see the figures. Okay, so I don't know what the degree to which they found it, but this is kind of common knowledge. So an external locus of control is like, okay, let's do a hypothetical scenario. So let's say you stub your toe on a piece of furniture.
Okay.
The person with the external locus of control is going to be like, oh my God, I have so much sharp furniture in my house. And then the person with the internal locus of control is going to be like, damn, I need to be more careful when I walk around.
Oh, okay.
So the external locus of control tends to be stronger in the Democrat Party. So basically the Democrats would be the people blaming the furniture for stubbing their toe. And the conservatives would be the ones saying, oh, I need to like watch where I'm walking. Like that was my fault. You can see this in the party's explicit ideologies, right? Like this is why conservatives are always talking about, do your own self-improvement, or you can do it, you don't need government aid, all this stuff. Whereas Democrats are always pushing for institutional and macro level reform, because basically Democrats believe the world isn't safe for them and the world needs to change to make it safer for them or better for them.
Okay.
Whereas conservatives are like, I am going to change myself to be better. And they believe that like everything is dependent upon them, basically, not the system.
But do you have an internal or external locus of control? I feel like I have an internal.
So for me, I'd say it's probably about half and half. I mean, it talks about independent parties. Like I am a self-declared moderate, but I actually like really do believe that there is both external and internal locus. Like it's necessary to perceive both, because the extreme internal locus of control is like, what if there actually is like a sharp piece of furniture in your house that you just need to take out? If you never take it out, you're going to keep stubbing your toe. And then like, you're just going to, it's like, well, you could have taken that piece of furniture out, but you didn't. And then on the opposite end though, it's like, if you're always, blaming the furniture for stubbing your toe when you're really just like, I don't know, being lazy or not walking right, then it's like, well, that's not going to solve anything. When you take out the furniture, you're just going to trip on other stuff. This is kind of the extremes. These are how the party's general ideologies are. Democrats have an external locus of control. Republicans have internal. And so this is why, speakers that want to appeal to the Democratic Party, they always play to them as victims, because victims have external locuses of control.
Whoa.
And this is why, for conservatives, someone like Trump, who's very powerful and individualistic, appeals to the self-made man kind of person. And so psychologically, we actually do find that people with internal locus of control are psychologically they're better off. They have healthier psychological well-being. People with external locus tend to have more problems psychologically. But I'm not doing that to say that all people on the left are just in a victim mentality that's destroying their lives. The reality, I think, is that, and we know this from like a lot of studies, that people who grow up in areas where they're like lower SES areas, where they're like defeated a lot younger, or unsafe areas, they tend to have lower self-esteem and all these other things, and they tend to have an external locus of control because of their environment. There are environments you can live in where there's a big difference between external and internal locus. Like if you live somewhere where there's like shootings all the time, jobs are uncertain and all this stuff, you're going to have more of an external locus of control because most of your world is unpredictable. But if you live in like a place where you've had a lot of success and maybe getting things has been easier for you, it's easier for you to have an internal locus of control, because you can say, oh, like, of course it was me that made this stuff happen. Like no one is ever going to really attribute their successes to like environmental factors. I mean, maybe some people, but
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And so I would say like the healthy political mindset is to understand both, because there are people that it makes sense why they have an external locus, and there are people why it makes sense they have an internal locus. And I think it's just important to be able to see both sides in order to have like a healthy outlook on the spectrum, because either of the extremes don't work. Like if you have only an external locus of control, like if you believe that everything, basically that changing the government will change you, well, that's not going to work. Like it's not realistic. Like no matter how many government policies you change, it's like you can't, that will never change you as a person. It won't make you happier. For the other side, you can always tell people to do better and stuff, but like what happens when there are things that they can't change? Because you can't change everything. That's unrealistic. Like you can't take full responsibility for your life, and we need other people. We need help from others. And so if you understand that we all need help from other people at sometimes, then what that means is that like we're not supposed to do it on our own, and in that case, that person you're helping is kind of like a victim. And so I think conservatives need to understand it's okay to be a victim, because everyone is a victim at some point and they need help from someone else. But liberals have to understand that you can't be a victim all the time, and that shouldn't be your identity, because that's just not a good way to live. Like you can't expect everyone else to help you all the time. You have to do some stuff yourself. So like I think a proper political mindset, or even just in general, for your psychological well-being, is to understand that there are times where you'll need help and things are outside of your control, but also as a default, take responsibility for your own life. And I think for people that have been victims and like understand what it's like to be a victim, they're more sympathetic towards left-wing like causes. Like I'll be honest, after I was sexually assaulted, I felt like understood a little bit more of like why people have an external locus of control, because that event really did make me a victim. Like I didn't have a choice. I was victimized by something. And it just kind of caused me to realize, everyone is a victim at some point. And so it's like the left isn't right, the right's not right, but they're both together. Like this, they represent about all of humanity. And it's just so happens that about half of the people in our country think this one way and another half think the other way. And so to have a healthy community, you need both sides. And this is I think a big example of that is the external versus internal locus, and like something that people in both parties, like they don't notice these things. They just, because like for Republicans, they take all this pride in like being American and like pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, but that can also just be a personality thing that they have. Like it's like a tendency. And there's other studies that I'm not going to pull up right now, but that show correlations between like your personality type and your political affiliation. Like certain personality types are just way more prone to be one type of party than the other.
Mm-hmm.
It makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, what do you guys think about this? I just kind of ranted a little bit.
That was a beautiful rant. It's definitely important to have both the internal and external perspective on things. Do you think there's a way to implement that on society without being too like culty or controlling?
Well, dude, honestly, the natural way is just politics. Like it's compromise. It's what we've been doing for forever. Like actual, politics done the right way is this. It's you're mediating between these two groups of people that see themselves and their relationship to the world different.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think a good president should help people who are victimized, because people are victimized, but should also encourage people to make their own way and take pride in themselves as an individual. Like I think if you don't encourage both of those things, you get these really unhealthy populations where, like with Trump, for example, he is so far on the individual side of things, like really just not showing any empathy at all, almost ever. I don't think that people on the left can get like a healthy dose of individualism from Trump. I think they feel like his individualism is so strong it almost attacks people that feel like victims. So that's just makes a bigger pushback from people on the left, where they're like, okay, now I just have to separate myself from this even more, and I'm going to make my identity even more about being a victim, because this individual person, the individualist person, is so aggressive towards us. And then same thing with conservatives. It's like I was on some internet argument the other day, like briefly mentioned systematic racism, but this conservative guy was triggered just because I used the word systematic. He's like, "Oh, like don't even use that. Like that's not real," and like all of this stuff, and starts like cussing me out. And it's like for a lot of conservatives, they've been so far radicalized to be this individual that's responsible for everything that any notion that there's any kind of systematic changes that should be made is like threatening to their way of being. So,
Oh,
yeah, so definitely having more radical differences between the presidents, that does not help Americans, like, because we really look to our president as a role model. If we don't have like a balanced one, then we just continue this radical separation that we have right now, I think.
I'm gonna have to say I think the same thing. Like having like too crazy of personality and like having just like all these rampant things that he talks about. He says whatever he wants. I know that really helped him in 2016, and like that's kind of why people voted for him. There's like this shock and awe factor. I don't think it's good to have like the leader of the country be like that. I'm not saying that I'm like supporting Joe Biden, but it's like I'm saying that like we need a leader who is like a balanced personality in some degree. Like like someone who you're like, wow, like that's a person who I would like want to like be inspired by. Like that's a person who I would like leave my teenager with for like a period of time and like feel comfortable that like they're going to be like a good influence on them. Some of the things that he says are pretty trashy. It's definitely not the greatest. You should aspire to like live a good life and have good conduct, and like, so what? I don't care how much money you make. It's like, who cares what money you make? At the end of the day, like if you treat people well, and if you mean what you say and you say what you mean, and you're a good person, and like people like being around you, you're better than 99% of the people out there. To me, I don't want to spend time with the president. Like personally, like if I had the chance to like actually like spend time with him and like ask him anything I wanted to, like mentor me or whatever, like have him be my life coach, I wouldn't want that.
Well, see, really that brings another topic, which is like there are a lot of politicians that are good guys, but they don't get elected. Then we get back to the problem of like lobbying and money and stuff, right? It's like, how did Biden beat out Bernie? Like, how did that even happen?
Yeah, dude. What the heck?
It's weird, right? Or
Hillary.
There are a lot of other good Republican candidates in 2020 or 2016 too, and they didn't. People are looking for something radical right now. That's why these people are getting elected. Like, people don't want, I don't think, a balanced president.
Do you think this year might be the most? Do you think this might be the most like unvoted year? Do you think we're going to see like the highest number of people who don't vote?
I wouldn't doubt it, man.
Like a majority of the country doesn't vote.
Dude, there's something I read in a book that basically, as we've gotten closer and closer, throughout the last century and into this one, our votes are becoming more 50-50. Like it's getting more and more even, kind of showing that like there's not really a difference between who we choose. Another way to think about it is that we're voting like monkeys. Like if
what do you mean?
Well, if you gave a bunch of monkeys like a thing where they could only press one button, you get the same results that we get in our elections, basically.
Whoa.
So that's why I think voting is stupid. Yeah. We basically just vote like monkeys. It's like it basically shows us on a statistical level, like there's really not that much difference between these people. At least the American public doesn't think that. I mean, I know the last election was very close, right, between Trump and Hillary.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
It was so close that I think the polls showed that Hillary won, and then Trump won from the Electoral College, right?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know either.
You want to look it up?
I remember it was really close.
Yeah.
You want to look it up? We can educate some people.
Educate me.
So in case anybody doesn't know, like you can have the majority of the population vote one way, but if the Electoral College has more votes, then it'll go to them. Or am I getting that wrong?
I think the Electoral College counts more. So this actually shows that Hillary won by 3 million people.
Yeah.
In the popular vote.
And that's like us citizens voting.
And then electoral votes, Donald Trump got he got a lot more electoral votes. I mean, that's pretty weird. The people elected Hillary, but Trump got elected.
Yeah.
That is pretty wacky.
Do you think
Trump won by a lot? That's not like statistically, or like that's not an even ratio either. This is almost like a very close to a 1-to-1 like almost even.
Uh-huh.
Whereas this is like, I don't know what that would be. Almost Trump has almost a third more votes from the electoral college than Hillary got.
Dang, dude. Do you think is that right? Like, do you think that is the way our politics should be set up? Why do we have that? I mean, I know why, like I like checks and balances, but
Why do we have the electoral college? If a majority of the people can vote one way, why would it be like not reflecting that in the electoral college?
that's a good question. People on the internet land, let us know.
I'm still tripping about the internal locus versus external locus.
Yeah,
That's
dude,
like a really insightful thing to think about.
definitely.
I think that it's definitely like in between both of them. Like you guys were saying, like we got to have both of them. You got to get some of the sharp furniture out of the room, and then also kind of like look where you're going a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also it's a compromise within yourself, right? Because like you have to be a balanced human being in order to not be on the left or the right. Like I hate that I have to say that, but it's true. Like I don't see
Wow,
how
that's heavy. Do you say it again?
well I don't feel like a healthy human being could either fully like subscribe to left or right politics because there's an imbalance within that person. For instance, if you're going to be a conservative, you have to kind of choose not to have empathy for some people because your party tells you not to. If you're a liberal, you kind of have to accept that you're a victim even if you don't feel like one. And so it's almost like they would be asking you to like make your life worse. Like
Well, they also kind of ask you not to have empathy for us too, or I mean, not us, but like I guess I grew up conservative, so like I know a lot of people on the left who like come off like they have no empathy for conservatives, and
I
it's the
think
same thing with
yeah.
conservatives too. It's like conservatives come off like they have no empathy for liberals, and liberals come off like they have no empathy for conservatives.
Yeah, let's look at something cool here.
Very two-way street there.
Political polarization in America by year.
Oh, it's a moving thing. Let's check this out.
What are we looking at, Austin?
So this is a graph. What this means is if it was a perfect bell like in the middle, that they would be agreeing on most things. You can see it like in 1994 it was almost like a same mountain. Now as we go to the 2000s, 2008, that's Obama, it starts to get really polarized. Up until 2014 when we have I forget what it's called, but two separate curves completely.
The double bell.
But the key thing here is
Double
look,
B.
you lose all the moderates. See, the bulk of people are around the middle in the 90s, and then going towards modern times, this is the moderates. They go away.
So it really starts to happen around like 2010, 11.
I saw the big change in like 2008 with let's see, this one's 2017.
Like the financial recession.
Yeah. Well, look, here's 2017. Like 1994, 2017. So here you have, look, the moderates are like the strongest group. And this is what I think people reference when they talk about classic liberal is like this. But now look where all the liberals are. They're like way over here.
Whoa.
And it looks like this could also explain partly, if we accept this graph is true, why it is that liberals have a louder voice. Because look, you have more liberals in this one kind of area of polarization. Like they're this radical right here, and this is the biggest peak. Whereas conservatives, their volume is spread out kind of evenly. Like there's a lot of varying degrees of Republican polarization. So you don't have any one point kind of sticking out.
It's more even than the liberal side. Like it's more, I feel you do. That's really interesting. What used to be the strongest or like the majority, the most crossover is now like the smallest.
Yeah,
it's the Mayan calendar. It's 2012 is when the Mayan calendar ended, and that's what did it. There's like an anthropologist who said that it's not supposed to be the end of the world entirely. So people who thought that like, oh, the world's gonna end, that's like not what it was supposed to mean. But it was supposed to be like the end of like an era, and then like some like really crazy stuff was supposed to happen after it, like go into the next phase of like life or something.
Whoa, dude, that's really interesting. Just like I had
what happened?
Like an inspiration, like looking at this graph and the two kind of separating. Kind of like how like a cell like divides and then like contributes to more life. Maybe like this is the divide we're experiencing. Like
what if like humanity is gonna split into like 2 different species?
something like that, dude. I don't know, like 2 different organs.
Yeah, like 2 subspecies of Homo sapiens.
Something, yeah. I don't know. That's
and then like
interesting.
a third species will just go live on the top of the Himalayan mountains and drink tea and like not have anything to do with this. Yeah.
When you start to get people this extreme on left and right, they actually start to share a lot of similarities. So, for example, you know, both groups claim to be like more or less tolerant, but they don't tolerate the other side. They both are using identity politics, whereas like before 2016 election, there weren't as many Republicans using identity politics, but now they all use it. So does the left. Like, if you guys want examples of that, like all of the black conservatives that started speaking out since like Trump got elected, like Candace Owens, and there's a ton of other ones like her, but they have to be vocal about their race and their conservatism because we do identity politics now. Like, it's not enough for them to be conservative. People only listen to them because they're black and conservative. That's identity politics. And so the left, you know, has always done identity politics in the 2010s, basically. So we have like both sides are actually becoming very, very similar in the way they think. Where's that study right here, where we show they have the external versus internal locus and how that's one way they're separated is just a really simple thing. This is crazy. You can see like how likely people are to.
Wow.
There we go. So the higher one is it can be thought of as the Democrats. So it looks like turbulent, prospecting, feeling, definitely feeling, right? Because the empathy thing. Intuitive and extroverted. Yeah, so an ENFP is like the stereotypical, like, I have a friend that's an ENFP.
Yeah.
They're like very outgoing, charismatic, and kind of do a little bit of everything. Also creative. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an ENFP, except that I have more assertive than turbulent.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah, so it looks like you're the stereotypical Democrat in this case, but you have the Republican assertiveness or like the conservative assertiveness.
Something like that, dude.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
that's
and
weird.
then the typical Democrat or a Republican would be introverted, S.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
S.
TJ.
ISTJ, yeah.
What are your letters?
So mine's INFJ. So INFJ. See, I'm half and half, right? Isn't that funny?
Yeah, dude. That explains a lot how you're able to like analyze all this data and like read through the statistics.
Yeah, it literally predicts that I'm in the middle. So
very interesting. Max, you know what?
This doesn't like definitively define people because obviously, like you know, these are on a spectrum. Like everyone that answered introverted on a Myers-Briggs test, they might have been like 55% introverted, like barely answering over the thresholds. That's what you don't see here. It'd be interesting to see a study where they showed the degree like extreme extroverts, but my guess would be the more extremely extroverted you are, the more likely you are to be liberal. And that like the more extremely judging you are, the more likely you are to be conservative. So,
it's very fascinating.
Yeah. But like, dude, that and then this study we looked at, like you can already see these are two things that are just related to like personality, and this external internal locus I think is a lot related to how you grow up in your environment, how your parents tell you to look at the world. So what I think it shows is, you know, it's really important how you raise your kids. Also important to like understand that some people with certain personalities just think a certain way or perceive the world a certain way, and that like that's okay. But yeah, I mean, honestly, ultimately, to have good politics, you have to be willing to understand people on the other side of the spectrum. And like, I feel like, you know, a lot of people, especially if they grow up with parents that both have the same political affiliation, it can be hard to do that. Like, I was pretty lucky, I guess, in a way that I grew up with parents that have like opposite political beliefs. But they still got along.
Yeah.
And so to see that, I think to see parents with opposite political beliefs get along, I think is a very good example. It shows you, you know, that people can get along despite their differences.
Beautiful.
That was a cool conversation, man. That was definitely good to listen to that after working for 10 hours.
Heck yeah.
All right, you guys take care.
Peace out. Tight, dude. How do you want to How do you want to end this?
I don't know. I think we already ended it.
Yeah. Okay. Love you, dude.
All right, love you too, dog. See ya.
Bless your little heart.
My little heart.
Yeah.
Declaring that I don't have cardiovascular disease. I'll take that as a compliment.